As Lieutenant Jack Hendrick Taylor parachuted from the skies into enemy territory south of Vienna on October 13, 1944, he inadvertently became the first reported U.S. soldier to operate in air, land, and sea. Taylor was injured during the precipitous fall, but he still went on with the dangerous mission, involving secretly reaching out to anti-Nazi individuals in the area and forming an Allied network. It was one of several high-stakes operations in which the orthodontist from California was involved during his extraordinary career. After the Pearl Harbor attack, Taylor could have joined the Navy Medical Corps, but decided to enroll in the Navy and fight against the Nazis instead, eventually becoming one of the first elements of the Office of Strategic Services and mentoring hundreds of soldiers. But as fate would have it, his help was urgently needed in the European theater, where he organized the maritime unit in the Mediterranean and unknowingly became the first unofficial Navy SEAL, 2 decades before the Special Operations Force was even formed. Raw talent. Jack Hendrick Taylor was a 33-year-old orthodontist with a well-established practice in Hollywood, California when World War II broke out. Besides being a devoted doctor, Taylor always had a passion for the sea, and stories from his pre-war adventures point to his participation in 5 yacht races from California to Honolulu and 2 others in Bermuda. Taylor was also a licensed pilot, and during an expedition to the Yukon in Canada, he was even trapped for 2 days in a gold mine after an earthquake. His life was certainly filled with adventure. Like so many Americans after the Pearl Harbor attack, Taylor immediately responded to his nation's calling. He cast aside what would have been an assured and safe commission in the Navy Medical Corps and chose to become a line naval officer to serve in combat. He was then assigned to a submarine chaser. Taylor's reputation as an avid yachtsman and swimmer preceded him. Having met General William J. Wild Bill Donovan before the war, he was recruited into the Office of Strategic Services, or OSS. The organization had been recently founded as the United States Intelligence Agency during World War II and later became the Central Intelligence Agency. When America joined the war effort in Europe and the Pacific, the OSS needed men who could handle small boats well enough to navigate unexplored coastlines at night and even slip ashore into enemy territory. As early as 1942, Taylor was among the first 3 officers assigned to the OSS component, which soon evolved into the Maritime Unit. Despite initially being enlisted by the Navy as a boat instructor specialized in handling, navigation, seamanship, and water demolition, duty eventually took him elsewhere. A secret school was set up at an OSS base in the Potomac River, known then as Area D in rural Maryland, near Washington, D.C. Taylor then began his service at the Smith Point Training Camp as a chief instructor, devoting himself to the early development of the maritime school. However, the course of the war suddenly required experts in clandestine maritime infiltration, supply, and sabotage. As one of the first men to join the Maritime Unit, Taylor helped form the organization's policies and unknowingly set the basis for what would become the Navy's Sea, Air, and Land Commandos. Change of plans. In addition to their training program, the team at Area D created new equipment that would allow them to execute perilous missions involving underwater sabotage. A precursor to modern scuba diving gear, the Lambertson Amphibious Respiratory Unit became a key advantage for specialized elements in the Maritime Unit. In late 1942, Taylor was able to swim for over a mile while underwater, an extraordinary accomplishment that took him 48 minutes. Even Dr. Chris Lambertson, who developed the Navy Frogman's rebreathers in the early 1940s, was stunned. Then, on February 18, 1943, General Donovan approved the formation of the first underwater swimming group. The so-called L Unit comprised 2 teams, commanded by Lieutenant Taylor and Lieutenant R.J.H. Duncan, and they were soon sent to England for further training around the attacks of German submarine pins off southern France. However, the Maritime Unit attained branch status, so instead of joining the L Unit, Taylor was deployed to the Middle Eastern Theater of Operations to help organize the unit against Italy's eastern approach to the Mediterranean. Taylor arrived in Turkey in July, and although he was one of the most senior and experienced officers in the unit, he faced several obstacles in setting up operations due to military dominance and lack of recognition. Regardless, by August, he had assembled a partisan troop of mostly Greek crews equipped with indigenous kaiks, or fuel-engined wooden vessels with auxiliary sails not exceeding 40 tons. For the next 18 months, the lieutenant conducted over 14 sorties. The missions included penetrating hostile shores in Yugoslavia and Albania, and delivering supplies and undercover elements to friendly forces. Moreover, Taylor commanded a ground team in central Albania. For 3 months, they reported relevant information about enemy movements and positions, Rival search parties nearly caught them on 3 occasions, but the team and their leader escaped every time. General Donovan himself nominated Taylor for an Army Distinguished Service Cross, but he was bestowed with the Navy Cross instead. In addition, he is said to have been stranded on an enemy island for a month and a half and survived on his own. But his most remarkable exploit was yet to come. Relieved of his charge in December, most likely due to personal initiative, Taylor joined the OSS Special Operations Desk in Bari, Italy, where he was assigned to the behind-the-lines operation now known as the DuPont mission. This task would change his life forever. Air, Land, and Sea. The industrial city of Wiener Neustadt in Austria was to become an intelligence harvest if the OSS could reach the many anti-Nazi Austrians believed to live in the area. Furthermore, a major nexus between the German supply chain and the Italian front was based in the city, as was the Roxwerke, a key German aviation plant. Also, the Germans were thought to be erecting the so-called Southeast Wall in the area. The plan was to support the Allies, marshalling a resistance movement in an area where the American forces had no intelligence sources. A mission to infiltrate the region was hatched in the fall of 1944, and it involved 1 American and 3 Austrian men. On October 13th, Lieutenant Taylor and the 3 Austrians parachuted behind enemy lines, but the pilots were unable to drop the radios and other necessary equipment. Moreover, Taylor was injured in the jump, and one of his men became severely ill. Despite the obstacles, the party continued with the mission to gather intelligence and reach out to friendly Austrians. They also managed to collect photographs of German defenses and earn the trust of several local groups on behalf of the Allies. However, they had no means to send the information to the American forces and were then forced to cross German lines. On December 1st, a night before the team tried to escape to Italy, they were captured and sent to a prison in Vienna. The jailers tried to get the uniform-clad officer to confess that he was a civilian, but Taylor would not yield, as he would lose his rights and the protection of the Geneva Convention. After 4 months, Taylor was transferred to the infamous Mauthausen concentration camp. The American arrived on April 1st, 1945, and was immediately stripped of his uniform and handed civil clothing. In utter violation of his rights, he was treated as a political prisoner, continually suffering the beatings and abuses of the guards. He also became an eyewitness to plenty of gruesome war crimes. Taylor was scheduled for execution not long after, but a friendly worker found his sentencing papers in a stack and burned them. As the days went by, the guards realized that Taylor was still alive and ordered his execution once again. However, the 11th Armored Division soon came to the rescue, and the hero survived. In his own words, quote, "We never dreamed that Americans would ever be near, but we heard rumors that they were in Regensburg and coming fast. The SS departed about the 1st of May. No more executions or brutalities took place after the SS departed. On Saturday, May 5th, the guns were much louder, but still some distance away, and I had no hope that they would arrive before Sunday. I could only say, God bless America, and hold out my dog tags with a quavering hand." Testimony and legacy. Within hours of being liberated, a film crew documenting the camps recorded Taylor's testimony of the brutality he and others had to withstand. His words would prove invaluable during the subsequent Nuremberg trials and other court proceedings against Nazi perpetrators. Moreover, the evidence he helped gather led to the conviction of all 61 defendants at the Mauthausen trial. As U.S. Prosecutor William Denson expressed, the victims of Mauthausen had, quote, "constituted in the main the intelligentsia of continental Europe, persons who had the intestinal fortitude to stand up against the Nazi yoke of oppression." Taylor eventually returned to civilian life, and like so many others, suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder during his last years. Then, on May 10, 1959, he was involved in a plane crash not far from his home in California and passed away. When Taylor's OSS files were declassified after his passing, the world recognized his legacy as the first unofficial Navy SEAL, one who stood up to the Nazis 2 decades before the Navy's primary Special Operations Force came to be. Thank you for watching my video. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like button and let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And for more heroic stories from military history, subscribe to all our Dark Documentaries channels and stay tuned.